for help, never engaged, never got involved. And there was a reason for that. In 2009, I decided that I no longer wished to be in that career.
See, if we knew that, then we could master the symphony of the universe. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sphere of Success, the podcast that looks at challenge and adversity in business and how we alchemize that into positivity, growth, mindset development, and innovation, creation, and all those wonderful things that sometimes when we look back, we think, oh, actually, that wasn't so bad after all. But when we're actually going into this area of challenge and adversity, often it drains our energy. We can be feeling anxious, depressed. I know I've been there. And sometimes the world just seems black and bleak and everything around us. We end up, having rows with the people that are closest to us or our friends, etc. And we're thinking, hang on a minute, how can I get out of this ever decreasing circle of not feeling great? And sometimes that can last for years because that's what happened to me. So I speak from personal experience. And today we have the most amazing guest. He's called Michael Feeley. He is a former police person, and I'm going to actually read his bio because this is worth something to be interested in. Because if you're wanting to know about the law of attraction and how that benefits you in business, you should absolutely keep on watching the show. So, whatever your industry, you are the projector of the projection that you call your own reality. When you adjust your perception, that projection also changes along with your own personal world, which is something that you and only you have the power to do. As a former policeman and now author of International Speaker, Michael Feeley is an absolute expert in what he's talking about. He's going to discuss with us the real law of attraction and self-empowerment, which are the secrets that you weren't supposed to realize. Oh, I love that. So welcome, Michael. It's wonderful to have you on the Sphere of Success podcast.
Now, thank you. Good morning.
And now let's just deep dive into this because you were a policeman before and now you're not. And it's very different to what you were doing. So I think everybody would love to know what happened and how did you get to what you're doing now?
Well, I was born in the West Midlands in the UK, and I lived and was brought up on a standard council estate. I never felt that I fitted into to anything. I didn't particularly understand why the world seemed backwards to me. I spent a lot of time in solitude in my room because my mind could then just wander and go to places that in physicality I couldn't go. When I look back at my school reports, the teachers were describing a very, very substandard child who never asked for help, never engaged, never got involved. And there was a reason for that, because I just didn't feel compatible with the environment that I was in. And I was always open-minded. I was always having, very adult conversations with myself at the age of 6 and 7 even. I remember one occasion when I was watching a movie called The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, where he played this biblical character, Moses. And I was sitting there, age 6, thinking about the science of how this could happen. Could it happen? Did it happen? Was this man really real? Is this historical fact or is it something else? And this was at the age of about 6. So as I went through life, eventually there comes a point when you're in high school where you have careers officers coming in and you have to make a decision as to where you want your life to be, what career you want to do, what jobs you want to do after you've passed your examinations and left school. And I always wanted to be in the police. And it's really become a cliche when people say, I want to make a difference, I want to help people. But that really, really was the case. And I did want to help people. I wanted to help people at the time that they needed. And that is really kind of the prominent energy that I was carrying. So eventually I made many, many applications. And eventually I joined the police. I started off in London, and then eventually I transferred back to my home force and was in inner city Birmingham. But I signed up for a 30-year career. So as far as I was concerned, my life was mapped out. my life had been planned by me. I was going to do this job that I wanted to do, that I absolutely loved at the time, and that was going to be my working life, 30 years. And I was always on the response team, which means that I was on patrol dealing with emergency and non-emergency calls and various investigations at the same time. There was no particular standard day. You could go from literally helping an old lady across the road, and your next call could be the scene of a murder or a serious car crash or something really, really serious. So there's never ever a kind of a standard day, and I liked that. I liked not being able to know what was coming next. So I did that, and as I say, I was absolutely married to that job, to that career. And people used to joke that if they were to cut a vein, a police car would come out because I was that married to that career. But as I approached year 17 of 30, which was in my time around about 2008, 2009 was the main awakening that we'll go to in a moment. But around about 2008, I was becoming very, very disillusioned with the way in which the public service was going in terms of the politics, in terms of having your hands tied behind your back and not being able to do the things that you joined to do. So it was really taking me in the opposite direction to where I wanted to be. And this was making me very kind of disillusioned and very questioning and almost quite rebellious because I was refusing to do things that I was ordered to do because I knew that it was wrong. At one stage, I even turned around and refused to arrest anyone because I was so disillusioned with the way in which the service was being run. Now, at the same time, which you may say is a coincidence or not, I was having lots and lots of experiences that you could only describe as supernatural or paranormal. And people have their own opinions as to what these things are, but I can assure you that they're real. And it was literally happening pretty much on a daily or nightly basis. So for me, the paranormal was becoming normal and the supernatural was very natural. And a day didn't go by without something happening that you can't explain. Now, bearing in mind what I was doing at the time and my background, which is a very analytical, evidence-based occupation. You go to the scene of a crime and people tell you what has happened, but that's not necessarily what has happened. So you follow the evidence and you piece that evidence together, and then you write that evidence up in a concise way to then present it in a courtroom because a judge and a jury and barristers, etc., just want the salient facts. So you start to learn to become very efficient in terms of this is what I saw, this is what I heard, this is what happened. So my writing and my speaking and my evidence became very concise in terms to those salient points. So when I was seeing all of these strange things, because I was open-minded and believed that anything was really possible, I was able to accept what was happening. But every time I was going through this analytical process, what is it? What could it be? Could it be this? Could it be something orthodox? And I was finding that there was no explanation in an orthodox way for what I was witnessing. I was seeing portals opening up in the sky, and I was seeing things coming out of that portal. I was seeing portals opening up in the middle of a dense forest when going walking at night, seeing all of these different things, experiencing all of these different things. So when you added that to the complete disillusionment with an environment, it had really turned my life 360. And I was no longer the same person. I was a physical shell, yes, appearance, yes, but inside something had changed. And you can't unsee what you see. You can't just, get the old cassette players for those who can remember those and just rewind the tape and erase what you've witnessed because you can't. And these things began to continue. So I started off being a multiple experiencer of these otherworldly things, not really knowing what it was that I was experiencing, but knowing that it wasn't the usual explanation. And then I began to get scientific evidence for what I was seeing. And that scientific evidence was in the form of quantum equations and different things, which some of it was theoretical science, which now made it a complete science. For argument's sake, the portals that I was witnessing within Einstein's famous equation for reality, he actually put within that equation the possibility of portals. Now, I was witnessing what he had stressed in his mathematical equation was possible. So I was really taking Einstein's theory to fact. And these things were happening. Then I began to get lots and lots of information and piece together lots of information about the ancient world and what all of these monuments and monoliths and pyramids of the world were actually saying and what they actually were. And I was finding that none of these things that I was coming across and working out and deciphering was what was being presented as fact. So my life began to expand and investigate and use this evidential training in another platform. So in 2009, I decided that I no longer wished to be in that career. Now, for me, it was strange because there was no emotion, just no emotion whatsoever. I put my resignation in and there was no emotion. And that was really the only surprise because I would have expected to have had some kind of, panic or questioning. And I just didn't. There was just nothing. I had my final exit interview with the chief superintendent. And my parting words were, you tell me what to do, but I decide whether or not I do it. Bye. And I just walked out and never looked back. But as I walked out, I really had nothing to go to. I had no plans. I had no idea. I just had complete faith that all of these things must be happening for a reason. And I haven't come this far for there to be nothing planned. So even though I planned my life to the exact day, to the exact shirt, to the exact time, there were bigger plans at play. And there was always plans for me to slip into at a specific point. I found out that I had some of the greatest scientific minds that ever incarnated who were helping me and who were preparing me for a certain time for others to come in and continue that teaching. And a lot of the things I get are ideas. They are, as I say, quantum equations in my head. They are these epiphanies that piece everything together for me. And there's a reason for that, is because I'm being shown, I'm being taught, I'm being steered in a certain way. I then began to, like many people do, look into what is this Tony Robbins and this law of attraction? What is it? I watched the DVDs, I watched all of these things and wondered, we are being told to visualize. We are being told that when we visualize it and believe it to be true, the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. But then I was thinking, but why isn't it happening? Why are people visualizing? And then nothing happens. I wish to visualize. I'm going to visualize now winning the lottery on Saturday evening. And Saturday evening comes and they don't win the lottery. Why is this happening? And then I realized that, as presented, the law of attraction is flawed because it's not entirely about visualization. It's not entirely about asking for what you want, because the universe doesn't speak in the English language. The universe speaks in vibration. So taking that science of the law of attraction further, I began to realize that it's not what you say, it's what you are. The same way as if you walk into an Egyptian pyramid or a temple or wherever, you only see the level that you are. So you only get what you vibrate at. So that being the case, it was not just about visualization and saying pretty words and begging and saying please. You were getting what you were emitting, because the universe is a mirror and the universe has no choice but to reflect back to you what you are. So it's not what you ask for, it's what you vibrate at. And if you vibrate at a dominant frequency that matches your desires, then the universe has no option. It is the law that it has to reflect back to you what you emit, because we are all antennas. We all transmit, we all receive, but we only receive what we transmit because it bounces back. So this was the flaw that I found in all of these videos about the law of attraction. You have to be a vibratory being and connect to the vibration of your desires, and then it comes to you. And so my life really took all this wonderful new path, which continues, and it is really not for my benefit, even though I benefit from it. The benefit is for people who listen, who are ready to listen, who wish to live that life. And what is happening to most people is they keep returning to the old paradigm. They keep returning back to the old code, the old patterns. Because an example of this is, oh, I really want £1,000 in the bank by the end of the week. Well, that's not going to happen. It never happens to me. I'm unlucky. I'm life's victims. It's just not going to happen. Straight away, you go back to the old code. And then what you are transmitting is that you will never get that £1,000. So what is being mirrored back to you? You don't get that £1,000. And these things are not just pseudoscience. These things are universal law. But you have to maintain that vibration for long enough for the universe to pick up on it and act upon it. So if you go back to the old patterns and say it never happens to me, nothing ever good happens to me, it's always bad, then before the universe has time to respond and act upon its law, you then return back to it's never going to happen, so it never does.
This is so interesting because I liken it to a tuning fork.
Yes.
And when you strike the tuning fork, if you have a piano or a musical instrument with a string on it, that particular string that is tuned to that frequency will start to resonate.
Yes.
And that's where they call it a tuning fork, because the fork has got a perfect pitch and it will then highlight the thing that's attuned to that frequency.
Yes.
Now, my thing is, how do you know what to resonate, what your tuning fork should be tuned at? Because to know there's a thing in the Bible which says, at the beginning was the word. And that means to me that that was a sound. And when you break the sound down, that means a vibration. And there's all things and different religions and things, and there's the Om, that vibratory sound of the universe. And I know that the Sufis would be thinking about the way in which they were resonating. And then you've got the Gregorian chants that have this certain type of frequency in sound. But how can we as human beings be tuned in to the £1,000 at the end of the week? Because to me, if we knew that, then we could master the symphony of the universe.
In the beginning was the word is a frequency. The Great Pyramid of Egypt is a tuning fork. So
Stop that. Most people are going to go, what? The Great Pyramid in Egypt is a tuning fork.
yes.
Without going too much off topic here, but how does that happen?
What is happening is the Great Pyramid is an antenna, and it is transmitting and it is receiving, and it is tuning itself to the perfect pure frequency, but it's being transmitted through dimensions. Now, what I've found is that when you have the lime casing stones around the outside of the Great Pyramid, I have a chemical formula that proves that it is a voltage storage. And all of these discoveries that they're now finding underneath the plateau is a mechanical stress system. And that mechanical stress system is creating piezoelectricity, which is being stored by the Great Pyramid. Now, that electricity is then being converted and transduced into radio waves. So the Great Pyramid is a radio station and an antenna, which deals with pure frequency. Now, it is bouncing that off the ionosphere of Earth, which is then transmitting across the whole planet. So when you see all of the other monuments and monoliths of the world, like your Stonehenges, they are transmitting and receiving the Great Pyramid signals, the Great Pyramid communications. Now, I took again, not going off topic, but a number of years ago, I took a group on a tour of Stonehenge, and we went to the center of the stones. Now, my assistant, a friend on that day, as we were all in the center of Stonehenge, And this is her description. She went into a trance. She had to touch something physical in order to not go somewhere. And she began to use all of these what are known anciently as tonal rills, which are voice vibrations. And as she was doing these voice vibrations, each stone of Stonehenge began to reverberate in a circle. So when you go back to the example of the tuning fork, what you have is what is called sympathetic resonance. And that is if you have a tuning fork that's vibrating and you put a tuning fork next to it that isn't, that vibration will jump and skip. So they will now both be vibrating. And this was happening to the large stones of Stonehenge. So the Stonehenge was actually singing to us just because she was activating it with her voice. And she didn't mean to do this, it was just happening. So these places are sonic amplifications and they are tuning. And again, to go into what the stones are and how they are crystalline and how they're quartz crystal and how they're antennas and how they actually bounce off certain frequencies is a subject in itself. But suffice to say that the Great Pyramid is an antenna and a tuning fork. And in the beginning was the word. Science has it wrong because it is dealing with matter, or what it believes to be matter, when in reality, what it is shape in motion. Everything is a shape.
Mm-hmm.
And when that shape, when that motion and that shape becomes static, that is what we know as sacred geometry. So it gives us the chance to observe the universal mind through these geometric shapes. And that is why the Greeks called geometry frozen music, because it gives you time to study the universe. So when you go into these beautiful churches and these beautiful cathedrals, and they are full of architectural geometry, this is really the study of the universe and the study of mankind, because man is really the textbook. And if you understand yourself, you understand the greater celestial scheme. So all these things are done through geometry. So it is not matter, it is not stuff, it is shape in motion. And that is what the universe is. And this is a result of sonic waves, sound, because every shape is a sound and every sound has a shape, which is what your Egyptian hieroglyphs are. It is encrypted knowledge in a vibration. And that vibration forms and expresses itself as a particular shape. That's why you have hieroglyphs. It is sonic information. So going back to your question of how do you actually tune in, you have to make your vessel, your antenna, as pure as you can. Because everyone knows that if the antenna's dirty, if it's in disrepair, if it's not working properly, if it's been shut down, what you transmit is extremely weak. What you receive is extremely weak. Now, behind the five senses, there are other worlds that we never see, just outside the five senses. But we encase ourselves in this five sense reality. The senses pick up universal waves. They pass that information to the brain. The brain, largely based on memory, says, this is what I see, this is reality, when in fact, what you see is not necessarily what is there. So we never actually see true reality. We see the brain's interpretation of that reality. So if you are able to purify your antenna, then you will naturally align to the frequency of what your thoughts are asking for. And this is how you tune in.
What I'd just like to help people with is where you were talking about sound. What was it? Sound in motion or move? What was it? Object?
Shape in motion.
Shapes in motion.
Yeah.
To bring this back to something that's a little bit less mind-bending, if you put like sand on a disc, a canvas, a flat canvas disc, and you put it over a speaker, like a thing that you get in discos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The sound will make the sand go into patterns.
Yes.
into form these geometric, beautiful patterns like snowflakes and things like that.
Yes.
And the right types of sound will actually lift that sand into a 3D shape.
Yes.
And so for people struggling, because I know this is a bit mind expanding, but for people struggling to think about all these shapes, the vibration makes this matter into a 3D form.
Correct.
And it's been proven it's not gobbledygook,
Yep.
it's real stuff. And so when we're thinking, and this is the way that I think about it, in this way in space, in the universe, etc., and everything talking to each other, a tree, for example, will be resonating at a certain frequency, and thereby the shape of the tree will be there because of its frequency. The way that we resonate as human beings. So we are in that particular shape and form, buildings, for instance. But without that frequency, everything from the molecular level will collapse because it needs that vibration to keep it in place. And if
Correct.
the vibration isn't there, it wouldn't be there.
That's right. So for anyone that wishes to verify what we've just said, it is a branch of science called cymatics, which is spelled Cymatics, cymatics. And yes, they put sand on a plate and introduce different sounds, and that sand then creates different shapes because every shape is the result of a sound. So when you see the likes of crop circles, when you see the likes of, as you said, snowflakes, and you see this beautiful geometry, it is replicating the sound of the environment. So when I looked at cymatics, I realized that when they introduced a particular sound, a shape appeared. But when that sound was switched off, it disappeared. So on that basis, I then began to think, well, therefore, for shapes to be maintained, which you just alluded to, for a shape to be maintained, there has to be a constant vibration that is maintaining that shape. And that is an invisible vibration, an invisible frequency. And then I began to look at the likes of Pythagoras when he was saying that he could hear the music of the spheres. And I took that work further and thought, well, what you heard was the music that maintains the spheres, not the music of the spheres. Because if that vibration, that sound wasn't there, then there would be no spherical planets because they would just disintegrate. If there wasn't this invisible vibration, we wouldn't have a human form. There wouldn't be any shape that was maintained. So there has to be this invisible vibration. And in the beginning was the word. In the beginning was universal sound. And sound is really what scientists are misunderstanding as matter, as solidity, when it's not solid. So the whole thing, really, every shape that we see is a result of a sound creating that shape, including the physical body, including the buildings, including the world, including everything we see. And again, as I say, when you stop that shape from moving, you get geometric shapes, which are static sound.
Yeah. And then you go back to the Buddhist tradition where then you break down to the molecular level to make sure, then they say nothing is real as we perceive it.
Correct.
And so, from that perspective, Buddha was saying to end all suffering, we need to see beyond what we actually perceive. And then there's this whole thing which we discussed, that which I mentioned when I was reading your bio, that we are receivers, we are projectors, but we are also perceivers.
Yes. Yes. Because everything is based on our own perception of what we are seeing. You know, we see something and our brain tells us what it is. And again, going back to what I said at the beginning, all of the things that I was experiencing and now witnessing, I didn't just accept, well, it must be this because that's what everybody's saying. There was an analytical evidence gathering going on inside my head every single time. And that was, let me try and eliminate what we know. And just like Sherlock Holmes says, when you eliminate everything you know, what you are left with is what you're seeing. And for me, what I was being left with is something that couldn't be fitted into any of the orthodox explanations. And this was happening time and time again, but it went through the same analytical process, because I wanted to know. And I don't just jump to conclusions. Even now, after all of these years of experience, if something happens, it goes through the same process. So people have a perception, but that perception is often programmed into them. And from a young child, society molds you in the way in which it wishes to mold you. It tells you what to say, it tells you what to think, it tells you what to do. And anybody that doesn't comply with that mold is seen as something that is weird. Yet it is somebody who is breaking out of the cage. We are transmitters, we are receivers. But that transmission goes beyond the five senses. When you look at all of these ancient places, they are using anatomical analogy all of the time. The cathedrals, the churches, your pyramids are all based on canon proportions, which is the geometry and the mathematics of the body, because they realized that this was the grander celestial scheme, which everyone is a part of. So the human body became the textbook. And when you read through the Bible and you look at every single character, every single story that I've examined in the Bible relates back to human anatomy. It was never a historical event. It relates to human anatomy because they realized that the human body is the textbook. This is why you have all of the beautiful statues of Greece and you have all of these mannequins in the churches. It is to remind us of our divine power because we are made in the image of that power. And our body is an expression of that power. So this is why I have all of these mannequins and statues. It is not an object of worship, which is what we now do incorrectly. It is an object to remind us of what we are. And when you remember what you are and you remember that your body is the actual original temple, you take that temple wherever you go. It's the same as I say that when people talk about the books that I write, I say that I am the book. And every day there is a new version of that book. And wherever I go, that book goes. Now, in the same way, whatever industry you are in, whether you are in the cleaning industry, you are a CEO of Facebook or Amazon, whatever condition you put yourself in is the condition that you take to wherever you go. And if you are in a condition that you realize that you are the potential, anything that the universe can do, anything that you can imagine, you can do. And if you have that attitude and that mentality, you will never ever fail because you can't fail. And regardless of where you are or what you're doing and what you work as, it is you who is always the center of your own universe. This is one of the meanings of the monad when you have the circle and the dot in the middle. Wherever you go, you are at the center of the universe. That is you. So if you get yourself in that divine condition, that divine mindset, you can put it to anything because you are that divine mindset. But you have to put yourself there by looking beyond the programming of society that you will never amount to much. It is too great for you. You should be doing something more simple. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing this. Forget what people think. Forget what people say. Decide what you want and focus on it. And everybody that is able to put themselves into that condition will succeed. And whatever they do, that condition goes with them because it is them.
And
And these are the things that you are not meant to know.
Absolutely. Here, because I was at the point of taking my own life. I got that so low with resonance that I couldn't even see the point. And then I was divinely guided that I had a purpose. And once I'd accepted the purpose, once I'd surrendered the old way and took the purpose, and I'm very open with this because ultimately A lot of people have got suicidal thoughts and we don't tell people. So I share this not for poor me or anything like that, but if there's anybody listening, you can come through the most horrendous things. And mine was abuse and trauma from childhood, which affects your vibration and allows certain things in that shouldn't be there. But
Mm.
ultimately, it all had to go. And it was that shedding that allowed me, I have to say, in the blink of an eye, for me, it's not the same for everybody, into a different world, into a different paradigm, into this new reality. And once I realized I was in there, there's no way of going back. And so, to be fair, I've lost some friends over it because I'm
Mm.
not in that world anymore. But I always say I've only got one chance in this world of the perception of what I'm here to do today. And so, not that I'm callous in any way, because I'm not, but sometimes we're on a journey that other people aren't going to be on. And we have to realize that fact. But there are other people like yourself and whom I meet who are on that journey. And so it's important, as you say, to be keep yourself as pure as possible. And one of the things, and again, I'm not advocating for anybody's life, I just do this. I turned away from alcohol and I don't take the toxins into my body that I used to. And I take care of myself more in my mental state and my physical state from exercise and getting out into nature and being quiet rather than always busy. Busy is important sometimes. You've got to work hard, but ultimately it shouldn't be to the detriment of your health or your loved ones. And a few simple changes. There wasn't rocket science, didn't have to re-engineer the whole of my existence to do this. But I started to see things, perceive things in a different way. And once I did that, then everything else kept on coming. And I refused to go back into the old ways of which I said at the start of the program, anxiety, depression, the victimhood that I carted around with me my whole life, because I looked at it and thought it got me to the point of not wanting to be here anymore. So how good was that for me? Not
Exactly.
very good.
It's
But
it's the deeper meaning of the biblical "Thou shalt not kill." This is really why in Islam they don't have alcohol, because "Thou shalt not kill" is talking about "Thou shalt not kill your spirit," and the likes of addiction and alcohol and all these things kill your spirit. So there's a deeper meaning to this "Thou shalt not kill." And what you are doing with these addictions is you are killing your potential because you are keeping yourself in this low vibration. You didn't lose your friends, they lost you. And by
okay.
that, I mean that when you begin to see beyond the perception and see things that they are not yet able to see, it doesn't mean to say that they never will, but at some point, at the moment, they cannot see what you can see. And no matter how much evidence you give them or how much of a lecture you try and give them, they cannot see because they're not ready to see. But when you begin to look beyond that perception, beyond that illusion, then you basically create a new vibrational password for yourself. And only those who vibrate at a similar frequency have that password to enter into your life. And this is what happens. It's a natural progress. We have these wonderful things, these wonderful mechanisms that enable us to measure. We have the likes of duality, for instance, that enables us to measure how far we have progressed. It's like when somebody once says to me, when I get your newsletter, when I get your information, 6 months ago, I couldn't understand what you say, but now I can. And I said, well, the newsletters haven't changed. The information hasn't changed. You have changed. And how can you measure that change? Well, what you couldn't understand 6 months ago, you can now fully understand. So that is your measure that you are now making some kind of progress away from what you once were. And everybody has these mechanisms. We have these reminders. We have these ugly gargoyles on a church with wings. Well, the ugly gargoyle is the earthly condition. The wings are your potential for that freedom, for that liberation. So it is liberation while you are alive. And those wings remind you of that potential. So everyone has the potential and the mechanism within them to see past that illusion, to see past the programming of society. Because the likes of the church authorities remove certain books from the Bible that speak this way, because they wanted ultimate control over you, your mind, your soul, your heart, and your reality. So they invented stories, and people believe these stories to be an historical fact. They are the conveyors of secret information that repels the unready. If you are ready to see the information, you will understand it. But until you're ready, you won't. You'll continue to believe that these are stories. You will believe that a 120-year-old man built this wooden ark, and that every single insect, every single bird, every single animal of the world was contained on this ark. But when you actually look beyond that illusion, you will see that it is talking about anatomy. When you look at the Moses story, you'll realize that it is talking about a spiritual evolution. When you listen to the Jesus story, it is talking about your own divine nature. And everybody has that Christ within them. If you reverse the word Christ, it becomes an Egyptian word, Shirak, which means seeker of truth. So when you are on this journey, you move away from what you once knew. You know, you are that ship that is sailing, and every now and again you look back and see the shore that is getting further and further and further away. That shore is you, what you once were, and you are now evolving. And that is your spiritual evolution.
This is so fascinating, and you've got to come back because this is just amazing. And one of the things that, again, it doesn't matter what religion or where we come from with this, it's the personal development and the growth potential.
It is.
Um, but in the Bible, I think Christ said when he was being interrogated that he was the
Yes.
truth seeker, the truth, to
Yes.
seek the truth. And they say the truth will set you free.
Yes, it will. And if you say reverse the word Christ, it becomes an Egyptian word for seeker of truth. So it doesn't matter what religion you are, but the mistake that the followers of these religions are making is that they're seeing their religion as this individual entity. If you actually look, and I have, at the origin and the essence of all of these religions, at their origin, they all say the same thing. So if you imagine the bark of the tree always remains the same, but the leaves and the branches fall off and they change. Religion are the branches. The truth is the bark of the tree. It never changes. So when you look at Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, Buddhism, all of these different religions, at their true essence, at their origin, they are the bark of the tree. And they are all saying the same thing. And that phrase is know thyself, liberate thyself. And they are giving you these mechanisms of spiritual truth. But people have taken these spiritual truths as historical fact when in fact they convey the truth of self. You cannot know anything unless you understand you, because you are, should we say, the little man, and the universe is the grand man. And this then brings us into the pentagram and the hexagram. You know, the word Moses means from six. The hexagram, adeptus major, the greater knowledge. So all of these things are there for us to decipher and find, but they have to be protected. But the only thing that protects them is the ignorance of the population. That is all that hides these so-called secrets, that people don't know what they're looking at.
Well, do you know, it's hidden in plain sight. And as a former
Yes.
policeman, I'm sure, bringing this full circle, that there's been many an instance where things have been hidden in plain sight. And once you see it, you go, ah, and then you
Yes.
cannot not see it. And I think that's a beautiful place to end this episode because I'm sure people are going, but I want to hear more, which is fabulous because you're here and you're able to help people. So, how can people get hold of you, Michael?
Probably the best place that, again, the epicenter is my website, which is michael-feeley.com. But if they just type my name into the search engine, something will come up somewhere. But if they want to go to the website, there's lots of videos on there, lots of articles and different things. So that's probably the best place to go. And there's also a contact form with my direct email address as well.
Fine. And for everybody listening, yes, these will be on the show notes as well. So don't worry if you haven't quite got that. But it's Michael-Feeley.com. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
And Feely is F for Foxtrot, Eeley,
That's
Michael
correct.
Feely.
Yes.
So yeah, please do go on the website. Michael has just not even scratched the surface with his knowledge today. Michael is a true exponent of something which he's a very honest man as well, because there's a lot of people making a lot of money out of this kind of stuff. And you've always got to make sure are people coming from a genuine perspective to help people. And I can say from having discussions with Michael, he's a very grounded and man who's been in the police force, so forensic evidence. He's not just about to just go woohoo. He's gone through and he's actually worked out and working out all the time what things mean, why they mean that, what it is. So he doesn't just take things on face value. Michael, it has been such a privilege and a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And anytime, just get in touch anytime when we do it again. And thank you for those who are watching. I hope it is of some use. If you have any questions, just email me. But I'll come on anytime you wish. Thank you.
Lovely. And to everybody listening, thank you as well and watching. We love the fact that you take part. Thank you so much for your wonderful comments. Do like, comment, and subscribe and share because this really does get the word out to people who really need to hear it, especially in today's world, because there's an awful lot going on. So until next time, everybody be successful, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye now.